Thank you so much for joining the Northwest Church YouTube channel. If you'd like to follow along with the message today, you can check out the notes linked in the description below. Let's jump into the message.
I want you to turn to the Gospel of John, if you would. We're starting a new series today, and I'll talk more about that in just in a moment. But find the Gospel of John, and I'm going to start with a series of questions, so let me let you in on this. These are not trick questions by any means, so there's not right or wrong here, and we're not keeping tabs, so there's no trick questions here. So I want you to be really honest. If you're in the building this morning, if you're online, you can participate on the inbox or in the inbox as well. But I want to know, how many of you are married? If you're in the building, I want you to raise your hand if you're married. All right. How many of you wish you were married? I want you to raise your hand. A few brave people going up. Okay, well, maybe we just have a little get-together after church, and maybe we can work some of this out today. How many of you, here's one, how many of you wish you were not married? I want you to raise your hand, okay? So a few brave souls are raising their hand. All right, how many of you remember your wedding day? How many remember the wedding day? That's a good, if you're married, that's really good to do that. Well, here's where I'm going with this. How many of you know that weddings and marriage itself can be a little messy sometimes? It can be a little stressful. Out of all the duties that I do, you know, that's preaching sermons, that's leadership, that's fundraising, and I know y'all think all I do is work on Sunday, but there's a lot of things that happen Monday through Friday, and funerals and all those kind of things. And the most stressful part of my job are weddings. I'm just telling you. I mean, it's just, I have had to literally break people up and say, you know what, Mama, you sit over here, mother-in-law, you sit over here. This is the bride, this is her wedding, so we're going to do exactly what she wants to do, and y'all can fight about this after I get out of this building today. But I can tell you some crazy stories about that. But it's a lot of stress, right? I mean, a lot of details. You got to pick out flowers. You got to pick out food. Who's going to be there? Who's not going to be there? And then you're dealing with the family. I mean, it could just go on and on and on. But I have to say, in all the years that I've been preaching, all years I've been officiating weddings, I've seen some pretty crazy things. So this past week, I was sitting at my desk, and I was putting the final touches to this sermon, and I had this idea. I thought, you know, I'm just going to throw this out online, and I want to hear some wedding stories. And I don't know if that was a good idea or a bad idea, because I heard some crazy stories. Some I can share, and some I will never be able to share with you, especially in church. But anyway, so I want to share some of them with you. And there's two or three here that's interesting to me. Number one, to my knowledge, and I've preached, I've been outside, preached outside in funerals, and when it was hot, when it was cold, when it was sleeting, when it was snowing, raining, all that. But to my knowledge, I've only performed one ceremony in the rain. And so I want to show you this right here. So this is Dylan McKenzie. You can see my gray suit right there. It's not a little bit of rain. There's a lot of bit of rain. And the guy, I don't get the umbrella, okay? That's for the bride and groom there. But I will, everybody, you can see in the background, everybody's under the pavilion, but just a handful of people out there, and we're out in the rain. So that one kind of stood out to me. And thank you, Dylan. You guys are here today. Thank you for sharing that with me. Go ahead, give it up. It's awesome deal. And then it's the wedding before the wedding. So I thought this was an interesting story. This is Wade and Mandy. They attend our church as well. And this is really, I call it the wedding after the wedding, because what you don't know and what their parents did not know is they had got married 2 weeks prior to this wedding. So it was kind of like a fake wedding, I guess. But it was an interesting story. I won't go into all the details with you, but I just thought, yeah, Wade's like, yep. Okay. All right. And then the next, I don't have a picture for the next, but I thought this was very interesting, because I'm sitting in my office one day, and all of a sudden Lindsay, our children's pastor, comes in, and she says, Pastor, can you do a wedding? And I said, well, sure. It depends on when it is. Am I in town and all that kind of stuff? And she said, no, can you do a wedding today? And I said, today? And I always get nervous when people come in and go, hey, can you marry us like right now? There's a story there that I'm not sure I want to get involved in. And so I'm sitting there, and I said, so she told me who it was. It's a young couple that attend our church. And so what had happened was they had got married in another state by another licensed minister. He was licensed, but was not licensed in that particular state to do the wedding. So, if you want to get technical, they were living in sin for about 2 weeks, okay? And so my heart went out. I thought, well, we got to do something about this. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And I kid you not, in 20 minutes, I have this really young couple standing in my office. He's got shorts on and a ball cap. I mean, they're very casual. And I said, I just want to give y'all a heads up. Because if I do this wedding right here and right now, I have no problem doing that. But I want you to know that this is your official wedding. The one that you spent all that money on, that's not going to be listed as your official wedding. So your wedding date is going to be today, the location right here. Like, we're fine. We're tired of living in sin. We're ready to get this thing on with. So I did the ceremony right there. And how many of you know the real stress starts after you get married? I mean, the easy part is getting married. I love this. This quote is by an American poet. This is really interesting. He says, now this is free today. It says, to keep your marriage burning with love, when you're wrong, admit it. And when you're right, shut up. Isn't that great? It's not even XO marriage. Now look, we're past February and the love month, and you're getting all this stuff free. All right, so I want you to put the whole wedding thing on the shelf, and we're going to come back in a moment and talk about that. But right now, I want you to go to the Gospel of John, chapter 2, as we start this new series. And it's called Eyewitness, and it's literally going to take us up to and through Easter Sunday. Now, the Apostle John was a disciple of Christ. He was an eyewitness to his life and his ministry. So everything that you're going to hear in the next few weeks, this is not hearsay. This is not something that John read in a book or he learned at Bible college, but these are things that he saw firsthand. He was eyewitness to the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. He saw his miracles. He heard his teachings. He was part of the inner circle. He was an eyewitness to the crucifixion and resurrection. And he tells us in John chapter 20, don't turn there, just watch the screen, John chapter 20, verse 30, he gives his reason for writing the Gospel of John. Here's what he says. The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written, listen to his words, so that you may continue to what? Believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name. So he reveals his motive. He said, I'm telling you all these things that I saw and heard firsthand because I want you to continue to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And you say, well, Pastor, that's pretty simple. That's not very profound. But in a world today where there are scores of false teachings and people claiming, well, this is the way to heaven. You can have your own way. You can have your own God. You can be your own God. I want you to know that I stand behind this. This is the Word of God. There's only one true God. He's the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And there's only one Son, and that is Jesus Christ. He is the Messiah. He came, lived a sinless life, and one day He's coming back to get you and me as Christ followers. So it's important that you and I continue to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. When you're hearing all of this noise and all these voices today that are telling you and your children that there are many ways, many roads that lead to heaven, that is simply not true. John's telling us there were a lot of things Jesus did, but not all the things he did are written in the book. John's gospel, by the way, is written from a different perspective from the other gospels. There are some seemingly important things the other gospels put in, but for whatever the reason, John chose to leave out. When you read the Gospels, you will see that John leaves out the nativity scene. Now you think, well, that's important. Why did that happen? The temptation of Christ in the wilderness was left out. The Sermon on the Mount, the most famous sermon in all the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount, was left out. And then also you're going to see there's some information about the end times that are recorded in the Gospel of John. So when you read the Gospels, you're going to see they all have a little different perspective, but it seems like John's in his own little world over here. Like John he's just got a different perspective. And could it be because he was an eyewitness to the teachings and the life and the and the miracles of Jesus Christ? Now, these things John recorded were to give evidence for believing that Jesus, again, is, and will always be the Son of God. That's the essence of this series. More than ever before, I want you to be convinced, and I want you to know that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Let's get started with John's own wedding story. We're going to come back and connect the whole wedding thing. Here we go. By the way, this is the first recorded miracle in the New Testament that was performed by Jesus. So John chapter 2, begin reading in verse 11. Here's what it says. It says, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. Now, Cana, a little history here. It's just a small, remote village. Many Bible scholars believe that you could have seen it from Nazareth. That's important. Cana, by the way, is only mentioned 3 times in the Gospels, and all 3 times they are recorded. It's recorded in the Gospel of John. In 2 of the 3, there's a miracle that took place in this small, remote village. And watch this. And it says, and the mother of Jesus was there. And I thought that was interesting. I thought the mother of Jesus was there. Well, where is Joseph? Where is the father? Well, I began to dig into that. And many Bible scholars believe that Joseph was already dead and had been dead for some time. So he was not there, which again gives more evidence to why Jesus was sticking around at such an early age, hanging out with his mom, because it was custom for the older son to take on the role of the father in case of the death of father left, and the son would what? Be the provider and to take care of his family. So again, just a little history there. Look at verse 2. It says, Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. And when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, no, I would not recommend calling your mom. Jesus got away with that, but you may not get away with that. Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Verse 6. Now there were 6 stone water jars. I want you to underline that, circle that, highlight that. That is very significant in this story, and I'm going to come back and talk about that, especially in the end. There were 6 stone water jars that were there, and here's why they were there: for Jewish purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. So these are not small jars of water. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, and they filled them up to the brim. I want you to underline that, fill up to the brim. That has some significance. And he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and watch this, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to them, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then give them the cheap stuff. But you have kept the good wine until now. This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana, watch this, in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So look at this. Visually, Jesus is like saying, guys, I've told you, and now I am proving to you, I'm about to manifest my power. You are about to see for yourselves that I am the true Messiah, and I am Jesus, the Son of God. So you say, Pastor, that's a great story. I mean, it's about a wedding, and they run out of wine. Jesus turns water into wine. Everybody stays happy and leaves happy. What I want to know is, what is the significance of this story, and how does this apply to my life? That's what this is all about. So I'm going to help you today. You know, I know it's going to be disappointing, but I only have 2 points today. I know, let it settle in. Here we go. Number one, it's in your notes. Jesus knows the immediate needs. Jesus already knows the immediate need. Look at verse 3. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Now, weddings in ancient Israel were a big deal, and they still are today. Now, I want you to visualize this with me today. They would last for days and sometimes even up to an entire week, mainly because travel was more challenging. Families would be coming from Jerusalem from all parts, and they would have to travel days to get to the wedding. So many might miss the day of the wedding, but they would be there for the celebration of the wedding. Again, it's why it would last the entire week, to give people time to get to be a part of this. Now, this goes on. This is interesting to me. The newlyweds did not go away after they got married. They didn't go away on a honeymoon. No, for an entire week, they kept an open house. Now, visualize that. You get married. You're ready for your honeymoon. And now the custom is you have to stay here, and you got both sides of the family hanging out. Y'all not getting this. This is weird. Now, the wedding ceremony was significant because the groom bringing his wife to their family home. This was a big deal. And if you really go back and look at the custom this, oftentimes the father of the groom would build a side room onto the house, and that's where the newlyweds would live. So ladies, I want you to get this. I want all of y'all to get this picture. So they would get married. They would not leave and go on a honeymoon. Rather, they would stay there for an entire week, hang out and talk with all of the family. And then after the week of the celebration was over, then they would move into the spare bedroom of the father-in-law. How many are glad times have changed? Raise your hand right there. Isn't that a good way to start? Well, so this was celebrated. This entire week was celebrated with food and wine, an entire week. It was a huge celebration that involved not only the family, but the entire community. And hospitality was most important and still is in the Middle East culture today. Hospitality is what marked a family's social standing in the community. So running out of the wedding or running out of wine at the wedding, this would have been a huge problem. This was a big deal. Now, to you and I, it's not. But in this particular setting, this was a major issue. Rabbis actually had a saying, where there is no wine, there is no joy. I'm going to leave that alone. Could you imagine sending out a wedding invitation, people showing up, they've RSVP'd, and they've done all of that, but you decide you're going to cut costs, and nobody would care if you ran out of chicken or cake, but if you ran out of wine, there was going to be a major issue. This would be a nightmare. I mean, in the first century, this could have been a very serious offense. You're not going to believe this, but believe it or not, this could have been a potential lawsuit, because they ran out of wine. I mean, can you imagine people traveling for days and they get there and say, what you mean you run out of wine? I came for the wine. I didn't come because of your wedding. I came to party and celebrate all week. So again, go back and look at the history of this. This was a serious offense for the families to run out of wine. This was a big deal to the bride and groom and their families. So here's the application of this. We read this story, and it seems like a trivial matter. It just seems like this is such a small deal because, again, we look at it through our lens and not through the lens of their culture. We look at it today and say, what's the big deal? Let's just call Uber Eats. Let's go down to the store. Let's get some more wine. This is not a big deal. But in that particular culture, it was a big deal. So, why do they bring this problem to the attention of Jesus? Some of you feel the same way about the needs in your life. They seem so small or minor that you often think, well, I just don't know if I'm going to bother Jesus with this. After all, we just took up an offering to help feed hungry people around the world. There are a lot more needs than what I have. At least I have food to eat. At least I still have a friend to talk to. At least I have a job. Not a good job, but a job. How many times do we fail to bring some of the small details of our life to Jesus because we think that He's too busy or they're not important enough to talk about? But in this story, you find out that there's not anything that is too small for Jesus. It does not matter how small of a detail it may seem to you, it matters to Jesus Christ. God cares about every detail. He is not distant. The Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 30, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Now watch this. You go back and look at this, they actually were numbered before you even had hair. That's amazing to me. And I know there's a lot of subtraction going on up there right now. I get all that. But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Look at the message, what it says. It says, He pays even greater attention to you, down to the last detail, even numbering the hairs on your head. Now again, why is Jesus telling us this? Because He wants you to know that He cares about every detail in your life. And I want you to think about this. If He knows and cares enough to number the hair that's on your head, how much more does He care about your health, about your finances, and about your relationships, about the mistakes that you've made and the poor decisions you've made? I want you to know Jesus cares about even the smallest details of your life. That's why we need to pray and ask God about every aspect of our life. That's the reason I've taught you over the years. You begin your day by acknowledging Christ and His role in your life. Saying, Lord, I commit this day to You. I submit my heart to You. Would You order my steps, every conversation, every deed, every body language, every facial expression. Let everything about me, Lord, I want You to be at the center of every detail of my life. Don't leave God out of the details and then wonder, where is God when you mess things up? All right, it's good. Jesus knows big or small things in your life. He knows about them. Number 2, Jesus meets the immediate need. Look at verse 7. Jesus said to the disciples, fill the jars with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And He said to them, now draw some out, take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. Jesus saw 6 water jars. Now, John tells us that they are stone, and that's interesting. And I'll talk more about that in the end. But it was something that the Gentile audience would understand, because this water was not for drinking, but it was for washing of hands and utensils. Because again, this was a religious ritual that would take place. And so they would come in, wash their hands, wash their utensils in these big 20 to 30 gallon jars of water. Now, I'll talk about the significance of that more in a moment. The fact that they were stone would mean that they could not become unclean according to the law. And again, put that on the shelf. I'm going to come back. That's the biggest significance. That's the essence of this entire story. So these jars, again, held between 20 and 30 gallons. Why did Jesus have them fill them to the brim? Remember, I asked you to underline that? So that no one could accuse Him of adding wine to them. Because the Jews would mix their wine with water. So this miracle was creative and transformative. It was a transformative miracle. Jesus informs the servants to take the wine, probably to the head servant or caterer. He said, I want you to taste it. The water is turned into wine, not only wine, but the best wine. And the headmaster said, you know what? We're going to use this first. And then when everybody gets drunk, we're going to give them the cheap stuff. Scripture, the disciples who just recently were following Him, they saw it and they were dumbfounded. He eventually, watch this, He evidently was doing this to prove to them what? His power. It was an amazing moment. Can you just imagine? It saved the wedding. It saved the groom and from lawsuits, the family from embarrassment, and the party itself. But most importantly, watch this. This is the essence of the story. It displayed the power of God. This was not an ordinary man. This was not just another rabbi. This was not just another religious teachers of the day. But this man, this Messiah, this Son of God, Jesus, had miraculous power, and it's on full display when He takes the water and He turns it into wine. That's what he's announcing to the world. I am who I say I am. The one that you have been expecting and anticipating, the one that you have been praying about for a generation. I am the true Messiah. Now, the application, not only does Jesus see your immediate need, watch this, but He has power to do something about it. That's why we take even the smallest details to Jesus. Before you make that important phone call at work, ask Jesus to be on that phone call with you. To prep the other person's heart before you talk to them. The smallest of details. Why? Because He has the power to do something about it. Too many of us live by the motto, God helps those who help themselves. You ever heard that? God helps because that's who He is. Not only does He meet our needs, He meets them in ways that we would never expect. We believe today the power of God. He still heals. He still sets people free. He still provides. He still is in the restoration business. I want you to know the miracles did not stop in the Old or in the New Testament. I want you to know it's not just recorded history, but they are there to remind us that God has the power to meet needs then, and He still has the power to meet your need today. You're not waiting on God. Maybe God's waiting on you to bring your need, and you say, well, this is too small. Again, there's not anything too small or too big to bring to God. You're not going to freak Him out or worry Him. He's not ever going to laugh about anything that you bring to Him. So if you have a need, you bring it to Him. Why? Because He has the power to do something about it. So instead of complaining on social media and griping, why not take it to the Lord? And say, Lord, here's my issue. Would you help me? This is my issue with my relationship, my health, whatever it may be. And you say, Lord, here it is. I'm just going to give this to you. Again, He not only recognizes your need, He knew it before you came in. When the mother of Jesus brought the issue to Jesus, He said, woman, why are you bringing this to me? My time is not yet to come. He already knew what was going to happen before He got there. He already had a plan. When this happens, I'm going to let everybody know that I am Son of God. So Jesus already knows about your need. God has met my needs too many times for me not to believe that He can do it again. God meets our needs for a purpose. The Gospels, by the way, record, watch this, 35 miracles performed by Jesus. In the Gospel of John, each miracle was assigned to point people to the truth that Jesus is the Son of God. Now, why would Jesus seem to waste His time and power on turning water into wine? Now, I'm almost done, so I want you to lean in. I want you to catch this. Let's go back to the water pots. Take them off the shelf. We're going to put them on the kitchen table. Here we go. The 6 water pots were used for Jewish ceremonial religious cleansings. We already talked about that. Cleaning of the utensils and cleaning their hands. Watch this. Jesus used the water pots to show that He had power to purify and cleanse people of their sins. That's the significance of the water pots. And Jesus knew by using those water pots, what was it? It was a pitcher. So just as you wash your hands and your utensils and they become clean, you come to me because I have the power to wash away the sin in your heart and remove all that junk and all that mess in your life. No one can do that except the Son of God. Only the true Messiah could do something like this. Jesus had a greater purpose than just meeting a social need of the host family. He had come to meet spiritual needs to the group of people that day. So His real reason for being there, they didn't even know it. They had no clue. And most did not know it even after He left what all this meant. Jesus is the Son of God who performed miracles for a divine purpose in the gospel. And He is still performing miracles today. I want you to watch this video.
Hey, I'm James Higley.
I'm Samantha Higley.
This all started back in 2013 when Samantha was originally diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer.
I had chemo, surgery, and radiation for about a year, and then we had several years that everything looked good and fine. So here we are at 2024. They said, the CT scan, we see something in your lung again, and we need to do a PET scan, to confirm.
Told us, absolutely, you have a new spot in your lung.
Yeah.
The lung doctor is like, absolutely, this is cancer. We need to do a biopsy to understand what the next set of treatment is.
Yeah, I would say easily hundreds of people, our families, friends, and churches, and, walked into the Campbell's house one afternoon, and Diane and Sean just came over and were like, can we just pray over you right here? And just people constantly praying over me and for our family. The doctor called at 7:30 on a Tuesday night. He had been out, but he called me and said, so we got the pathology back on the biopsy and it's not cancer. I was like, excuse me, what? And he was like, it's not cancer. And all 3 of the biopsies that I got from the different spots are not cancer. It's this other thing happening, but treatable, just not cancer. We're not changing anything on that. Like currently everything, there's not any cancer lighting up. And that was just really actually miraculous.
Well, you put your hands together. Isn't that a great story? Everything pointed to it was cancer. Even the doctors were saying they're 100% sure this was cancer. Many people pray, they get the report back, and no cancer. God is still in the miracle working business. The greatest miracle of them all is the miracle of salvation. Would you bow your heads with me this morning?
Thank you so much today for tuning in and checking out the message. We hope you were encouraged. And today, if you'd like to make a decision to become a Christ follower, please contact us. You can do that by simply clicking the link in the description below. And today, if you'd like more information about Northwest Church, or you would like to plan a visit to come visit us in person, you can simply do that by going to northwestchurch.tv. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to connect with you.